from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, texts 1 through 3, 1, 2, and 3. Chapter is entitled The Divine and Demonic Natures. So I presume you're familiar with the verse already because you've already recited it for the last couple of days. So we'll recite it and then we'll go into the translation after that. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavasthiti Dhanam Dhamascha Yagyascha Swadhyayasthaparjavam Ahimsa Satyam Akrodhas Tyaga Shantirapeshunam Daya Bhutesh Alo Luptvam Mardhavam Hrir Achapalam Teja Kshamadhriti Socham Adroho Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Devim Abhijatasya Bharata Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavasthiti Dhanam Dhamascha Yagyascha Swadhyayasthaparjavam Ahimsa Satyam Akrodhas Tyaga Shantirapeshunam Daya Bhuteshvalo Luptvam Mardhavam Hrir Achapalam Teja Kshamadhritir Socham Adroho Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Devim Abhijatasya Bharata. Prose. Shri Bhagavan Vacha
One verse per person. Otherwise it'll take too long.
Satyam Akrodhas Adroho Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Devim Abhijatasya Bharata. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. And the purports we're going to start reading today from the paragraph starting with, as far as the Brahminical quality of simplicity is concerned. In my book it's on page 660. It's the second paragraph from the bottom. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Bhai Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. As far as the Brahminical quality of simplicity is concerned, not only should a particular order of life follow this principle, but every member, be he in the Brahmachari ashram, Grihastha ashram, Vanaprastha ashram, or Sannyas ashram, one should be very simple and straightforward. Ahimsa means not arresting the progressive life of any living entity. One should not think that since the spirit spark is never killed, even after the killing of the body, there is no harm in killing animals for sense gratification. People are now addicted to eating animals, in spite of having an ample supply of grains, fruits and milk. There is no necessity for animal killing. This injunction is for everyone. When there is no alternative, one may kill an animal, but it should be offered in sacrifice. At any rate, when there is an ample food supply for humanity, persons who are desiring to make advancement in spiritual realization should not commit violence to animals. Real ahimsa means not checking anyone's progressive life. The animals are also making progress in their evolutionary life by transmigrating from one category of animal life to another. If a particular animal is killed, then his progress is checked. If an animal is staying in a particular body for so many days or so many years and is untimely killed, then he has to come back again in that form of life to complete the remaining days in order to be promoted to another species of life. So their progress should not be checked simply to satisfy one's palate. This is called ahimsa. Satyam. This word means that one should not distort the truth for some personal interest. In Vedic literature there are some difficult passages, but the meaning or the purpose should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. That is the process for understanding the Vedas. Shruti means that one should not hear from the authority. Shruti means that one should hear from the authority. One should not construe some interpretation for his personal interest. There are so many commentaries on Bhagavad Gita that misinterpret the original text. The real import of the word should be presented, and that should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. Akrodha means to check anger. Even if there is provocation, one should be tolerant. For once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. Anger is a product of the mode of passion and lust. So one who is transcendentally situated should check himself from anger. Apayishana means that one should not find fault with others or correct them unnecessarily. Of course, to call a thief is not fault finding. But to call an honest person a thief is very much offensive for one who is making advancement in spiritual life. Hri means that one should be very modest and must not perform some act which is abominable. Achapalam, determination, means that one should not be agitated or frustrated in some attempt. There may be failure in some attempt, but one should not be sorry for that. He should make progress with patience and determination. The word tejas used here is meant for the Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas should always be very strong to be able to give protection to the weak. They should not pose themselves as non-violent. If violence is required, they must exhibit it. But a person who is able to curb down his enemy may under certain conditions show forgiveness. He may excuse minor offenses. Shocha means cleanliness, not only in mind and body but in one's dealings also. It is especially meant for the mercantile people who should not deal in the black market. Nati Manita, not expecting honor, applies to the Shudras, the worker class, which are considered, according to Vedic injunctions, to be the lowest of the four classes. They should not be puffed up with unnecessary prestige or honor, and should remain in their own status. It is the duty of the Shudras to offer respect to the higher class for the upkeep of the social order. All these 26 qualifications mentioned are transcendental qualities. They should be cultivated according to the different statuses of social and occupational order. The purport is that even though material conditions are miserable, if these qualities are developed by practice by all classes of men, then gradually it is possible to rise to the highest platform of transcendental realization. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Darati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachavam Pangam Nandayate Girim Tatkripatam Vande Shri Guru Nityananda. So this is the last part of the purport for this set of verses. At the very end of the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that they should be cultivated according to the different statuses of social and occupational order. The purport is that even though material conditions are miserable, if these qualities are developed by practice by all classes of men, then gradually it is possible to rise to the highest platform of transcendental realization. There's a few things can be mentioned. There's a very nice analogy used for the divine and demoniac natures. I think this analogy originates in American Indian culture. They speak about two dogs living within the person, the good dog and the bad dog. His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj always used to refer to this analogy. So there's the good dog and there's the bad dog, and they're always fighting. And then the question is which one of the two dogs wins? Which one wins? It's the dog you feed. And conversely, it can be said, which one loses? The one you starve. So on one hand, we're actually meant to do both things simultaneously. We're meant to feed the good dog, but we're also meant to starve the bad dog. If you feed the good dog alone, it's okay, it's going to work, but sometimes you're also feeding the bad dog at the same time and you don't realize it. And what happens is they're both getting stronger. And then that means the fight doesn't end, because they're both getting stronger. If you want the fight to end, you need to finish one off, and that means he has to be starved. So there's two things. There's one is actually feeding the good dog, and then also starving the bad dog. And this is why this entire chapter, this chapter 16, you see Krishna is speaking about the divine and demoniac natures. And this verses 1 to 3 is speaking about the divine natures. And Krishna spends quite a lot of time also talking about the demoniac natures. Why? Because it's important to understand both and identify both, so that you can strengthen one and you can weaken the other. So both things need to happen simultaneously. And Srila Prabhupada makes a very, before we actually get into the qualities listed in the purport, it's this last paragraph that kind of very nicely sums up what Srila Prabhupada is the message Srila Prabhupada is getting across. He says these qualities should be practiced by men of the four varnas and ashramas. And by practice, he says, if these qualities are developed by practice by all classes of men, then gradually it is possible to rise to the highest platform of transcendental realization. Why would such an emphasis be made? Why is it necessary to practice? One could say, well, the Yuga Dharma is chanting Hare Krishna, and the Hare Krishna mantra is described in the Shastakam verses as Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahadevagni Nirvapana. The effect of chanting Hare Krishna is to cleanse the heart. So why is there a need for separately practicing these other qualities? Well, one could then, using this logic, one could then say, well, let us take, for example, the quality of cleanliness. So, one who chants Hare Krishna and gets purified by the chanting of Hare Krishna will naturally develop the quality of cleanliness. It's going to come of its own, by association, because the Hare Krishna mantra is Krishna himself. Abhinatva Namanam, we're chanting the holy name of Krishna, who is not different from Krishna. And therefore all the other qualities will come of their own. So therefore you should not take bath. Just chant Hare Krishna. You don't need to keep your house clean. You don't need to wash your clothes. You don't need to take bath. How many of you agree to doing that? Just wait for the quality of cleanliness to enter your heart as you chant Hare Krishna. Chant 64 rounds. Don't wash your clothes, don't take bath, and don't chant more than 64 rounds. Let the quality of cleanliness come of its own. So we understand that actually it's not wrong to say that the chanting of Hare Krishna will bestow all these auspicious qualities upon the practitioner. But we're starting out from a not very good position. And therefore, it's akin to trying to start a fire with wood that isn't dry. It's, if wood isn't dry, if it's stayed outside and it's rained and it's humid, it's accumulated water, and you try to start a fire with that, it's going to take a long time before you manage to actually start a fire. It's not a conducive element for you to start a fire with. So we're coming to, I speak for myself, coming to Krishna consciousness with a lot of material conditioning. And what happens is that as I take up the process of sadhana bhakti, I see in my own life how my conditioning impedes my spiritual advancement. So although the Hare Krishna mantra is all powerful, Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis, all the powers of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are within the Hare Krishna mantra. So as much as God is powerful, that much the Hare Krishna mantra is powerful. You can imagine how the Hare Krishna mantra is basically the most powerful force in the entire creation, because it's God. But the fact of the matter is that I'm not chanting Hare Krishna mantra purely. I'm not chanting without offense. I'm chanting infected with one or more of the 10 offenses to the holy name. And even if I succeed in avoiding them, I'm still infected with the offense of inattention. So, the point is that as one practices sadhana bhakti, one should simultaneously work on cultivating these qualities. And what does the cultivation of these qualities accomplish? The cultivation of these qualities enables one to cultivate the mode of goodness. What it's essentially doing is it's supplying you with dry wood. It's drying up the wood with which you can actually then start a fire. So it's creating an environment that is conducive for spiritual advancement. And then within that environment, that environment can be physical environment, it can be your bodily environment, and it can be your mental environment. By cultivating all these qualities, you're creating a space, you're creating an environment where the sadhana can actually act, where the Hare Krishna mantra can actually act and have a transformative effect. You're not trying to start a fire with wet wood and grass. You're drying up your wood so you can actually start the fire. Therefore, all these qualities are listed for us to cultivate simultaneously alongside the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. When Jagai and Madai, when Lord Nityananda was attacked, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so angry he wanted to kill Madai. But then Nityananda Prabhu said, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to kill pretty much everybody in Kali Yuga, because in Kali Yuga the divine and demoniac natures coexist within the person. The godly and ungodly traits exist simultaneously within the same person. The demons and the demigods live within the same person in one sense, like that. So if you're going to have to kill, then you're going to have to kill everybody, and then we don't stand a chance. So therefore, the killing is through knowledge. It's through the understanding of Bhagavad Gita. It's through subduing these negative qualities, the demoniac qualities, and reinforcing, strengthening the divine qualities, feeding the good dog and starving the bad dog. So let's go through the purport. There's mention of the Brahminical quality of simplicity. And it's very interesting if you note what Srila Prabhupada says right after that. He says, not only should a particular order of life follow this principle, but every member, be he in the Brahmachari ashram, Grihastha ashram and so on, should follow it. One should be very simple and straightforward. So it's very interesting because these 26 qualities are listed, and in the purport itself, Srila Prabhupada says, they should be cultivated according to the different statuses of social and occupational order. There are 4 varnas and 4 ashrams. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasi. And these 26 qualities, somehow or other, particular qualities are of particular relevance to particular varnas and particular ashrams. And there's also a question of combination here, because the Shudra Varna goes through all 4 ashrams, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha. Actually, no, sorry. The Brahmana Varna goes through all 4 of them, And then the Kshatriya goes up to Vanaprastha, and the Vaishya ashram I think goes up to the Grihastha, or maybe Vanaprastha also. And then, but the Shudra should always stay within the Grihastha ashram. They don't go forward. So there's a kind of combination there, meaning that if one is thinking which of these qualities are particularly relevant to me, then it should be on the basis of these two considerations. What is the Varna and what is the ashram? And you join both together, and then you look at, of these 26 qualities, which ones match for my particular Varna and ashram, and you add them up, and then that's your homework. So that's generally the understanding, and it seems from the purport that this is how Srila Prabhupada is allocating these qualities in terms of their relevance to the Varnas and ashrams. But you will also see that there are some places where Srila Prabhupada says, actually, it's not just for a particular ashram, it's for everyone. Or it's not even just for a particular Varna, it's for everyone. Like here, he says, as far as the Brahminical quality of simplicity is concerned, not only should a particular order of life follow this principle, but every member, be he in the Brahmachari ashram, Grihastha ashram, Vanaprastha ashram, or Sannyas ashram. So simplicity is not just for one of the four ashram. It's for all four of them, and it makes you think. Well, why is this? Why is in some places Prabhupada is saying particularly relevant to this Varna or this ashram, and then in other places Prabhupada is saying, as we'll see later on in the purport, you'll see, and you may recall from us having read it just now. Like for example, the very next one, ahimsa means not arresting the progressive life of any living entity. And if you look a little further down the line in the same paragraph, you'll see there's a statement here. Prabhupada says this injunction is for ahimsa. This injunction is for page 661, third line from the top. This instruction is for everyone. Prabhupada is saying the instruction is for everyone. He's not saying it's for Brahmanas. He's saying it's for everyone. Ahimsa is for everyone. So while the allocation of these qualities is being given, like you'll see in the beginning of the purport, Srila Prabhupada spends a lot of time discussing the sannyas ashram. You may recall from having heard the purport a couple of days ago. There's to such extensive lengths discussing fearlessness, the sannyas, and even a few other qualities as relevant to the sannyas ashram. And then now, and Prabhupada is speaking about, let's see. See, at the bottom of the page, Prabhupada said, the word tejas used here is meant for kshatriyas. And then, you see, socham. Socham means cleanliness, but in one's dealings also. It is especially meant for the mercantile people, for the Vaishyas, later on. So, it seems that there are some qualities for which Prabhupada is saying, particularly for the kshatriyas, particularly for the Vaishyas, particularly for the brahmacharis, particularly for the sannyasis, like that. And then there are other places where Prabhupada is saying, this is for everyone. Ahimsa is for everyone, regardless of your varna and ashram. It's for everyone. So how are we meant to understand this? Is this a contradiction? Is this, do we accept some? Do we reject others? It's an interesting question, isn't it? How are we supposed to understand this? It seems that in some places Prabhupada is focusing on a particular varna or ashram. Other places he's saying it's general, it applies to everyone. So I was thinking, the general principle is that actually Srila Prabhupada wants us to cultivate Vaishnava qualities. The real business is not varna and ashram. It's becoming Vaishnavas. Because we're meant to chant Hare Krishna without offense. In order to chant Hare Krishna without offense, we need to cultivate certain qualities. Simultaneously, as we're chanting Hare Krishna, we also need to, in parallel, work on ourselves, subdue negative qualities, cultivate positive qualities that make it easier for us to control the mind, that make it easier for us to chant without offense. If one is cultivating the quality of non-violence, he's less likely to offend others. than if he's not paying attention to non-violence. If ahimsa is simply not something one thinks about, then okay, I can do anything I want. It doesn't matter if it's violence towards others. But then that person, that sadhaka, can never actually be successful in the chanting of Hare Krishna. So the foremost principle, the guiding principle, is actually to become Vaishnavas, is to cultivate Vaishnava qualities, of which you could say the highlight or the essence is Trinadapi Sunichena Tarodapi Sahishnana Amanina Amanadena Kirtaniya Sudahari. So that's why Srila Prabhupada is so flexible and liberal. He's not rigidly saying, oh, this is... In some cases he's saying, okay, especially for this, especially for that. And in other cases he's saying, it's for everyone, it's relevant for everyone. Simplicity is relevant for everyone. Because simplicity is one of the ornaments of a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is simple by nature. So Prabhupada is saying here, simplicity is for everyone. But then the question is then why would then Srila Prabhupada in some cases say, well, especially relevant for Kshatriyas, especially relevant for Vaishyas? Why even make some emphasis? Why not just say all these 26 qualities are for everybody, and that's the end of the purport? So why Srila Prabhupada does that is because, see, there's this struggle going on inside, right? We all have a particular type of conditioning, individual types of conditioning, and that's the reason why we're also categorized into these 4 varnas and ashrams. If conditioning wasn't something so serious, if it wasn't something so significant, there would be no point in even discussing varnashram. Just chant Hare Krishna and then everything will be fine. But the fact of the matter is, conditioning is a serious thing to contend with. And if you don't know how to deal with it, it becomes an impediment in your devotional service. And if you know how to deal with it, it becomes an asset. So we can't just jump out of the material energy. We're spiritual sparks. We're encaged within material bodies and material minds. We're encaged within material energy. But we can't just jump out of it, by simply wanting to do so. We need to learn the science of how to work with our conditioning, so that we can then reap the fruits of the practice of sadhana bhakti. So we can actually cook with fire and not cook with smoke, as it were. And that's why Krishna is telling Arjuna, no, you're a Kshatriya. You cannot go to the forest and become a Brahmana. Your duty is to fight. Your varna is that of a Kshatriya, so you're meant to fight. That's the whole essence of the Bhagavad Gita. You have a conditioning, you need to know how to take that conditioning and engage it in devotional service. Now, it is also said in the Shastra that every endeavor is covered by some fault. Is that not true? Within every particular type of conditioning, there's a strength and a weakness. There's something within that is favorable for the practice of devotional service. There's also something within that can become an impediment. So, because we're dealing with different types of conditioning, the risk of the mercantile class, it's implied, it's implicit in the purport, that the risk of the mercantile class is to not be clean in one's dealings while conducting business. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada is giving an emphasis. So this is especially for... So it's not that the mercantile class should be very careful about their dealings, and then that the Brahmanas don't need to worry about being careful in their dealings. The Kshatriyas don't need to be careful about their dealings, and the Brahmacharis and Sannyasis don't need... No, this is for everyone. It's obviously for everyone. Because everyone is a Vaishnava. This is the meaning of Devi Varnashram Dharma. In Devi Varnashram Dharma, everybody is a Vaishnava. Chatur Varnyam Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. So by karma, see, many people have a misunderstanding of what Devi Varnashram is, and maybe that's the reason why we're struggling a little bit. Prabhupada said it's the remaining 50% of the work remaining. And we're making an attempt to fulfill Srila Prabhupada's vision, but we struggle a little bit because it seems like a leap of faith. For Varnashram to really manifest, we're going to need a mass exodus of our own devotees leaving the big cities and moving into farm communities. And every single devotee living in the city is going to first and foremost think, what about my retirement? If I leave my job and I surrender everything, I won't have anything in my bank account, and I have children to take care of. You asking me to leave that and move into a farm community and depend on nature, and my sustenance, my survival depends on whoever is in charge of that farm community. And what if I get thrown out? Where will I go? What? All these questions. And then therefore, because of the absence of a secure and very clear structure of how Varnashram is supposed to work, we don't have our devotees moving out of the cities in vast numbers and moving onto the land. And it's a very big topic. But it has to do with a misunderstanding of what Devi Varnashram is. Because our experience of Varnashram so far is not Devi. It's actually the perverted form of Varnashram. Something that's degenerated into caste by birth. And this is something Prabhupada actually addresses at the very beginning of this very purport. If you go back to the first paragraph in this very purport, you'll see Prabhupada is very clearly emphasizing this is not by birth but by educational qualifications. Guna karma. There is guna that somebody already has from having cultivated it from previous lifetimes. And then therefore Prabhupada is also emphasizing Garbhadhana Samskar at the beginning of the purport, if you remember. Why? Because Garbhadhana Samskar is invoking into the womb of the devotee mothers, is invoking the presence of souls who've already cultivated Vaishnava qualities from previous lives, but who somehow or other haven't made it back to Godhead. But they are there, and then they become an asset to the movement. But also for our own practice. So not just invoking such kinds of transcendentally qualified personalities, but also for us, Prabhupada is saying in the purport, for us to practice. And in that paragraph, Prabhupada is saying, it's not by birth, it's not determined by birth, it's determined by qualities. Whether this person who's being born into the movement, even he may be being born with certain qualities, but he cultivated those qualities before, and that's why he's being born with them. So guna karma vibhagasha. And because of this misunderstanding, and because our only experience of Varnashram so far is exploitative, there's a fear of actually, taking this leap of faith and fulfilling Srila Prabhupada's vision of Devi Varnashram. It's a misunderstanding, and if this misunderstanding is eradicated, we will see that actually Prabhupada's vision can come true, it can be fulfilled. And how can this misunderstanding be eradicated? Is precisely by understanding the higher principle. Like we said, the higher principle is that we're Vaishnavas first and foremost. We are Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras, or Brahmacharis, Grihastas, Vanaprastha and Sannyasis second. We are first and foremost Vaishnavas. And we are these Varnas and Ashramas second. And that's what we forget. And that's exactly what the perverted Varnashram gets wrong. And that's why they begin to claim that only those born of Brahmana families become Brahmanas. Even if by karma, they're repairing bicycles or they're smoking bidis. It has nothing to do with being a Brahmana. So this misunderstanding needs to be eradicated. And if the misunderstanding is eradicated, it will be clear that in Prabhupada's vision of Varnashram, every single Varna and every single ashram is accountable to every other Varna and every other ashram. The standard of Vaishnavism is for all four Varnas and ashramas. All four Varnas and ashramas worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Through the process given to us by Srila Prabhupada, the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra, 16 rounds daily, the following of 4 regulative principles, the hearing of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the worship of the deities. All 4 Varnas and ashramas do that. And therefore it is not possible within Devi Varnashram. It is not possible within, I like to say not even just Devi Varnashram, within Prabhupada's Varnashram. It's not possible within Prabhupada's Varnashram for one Varna to exploit another, because the standard is the same for everybody. If a Brahmana begins to deviate, even a Shudra can come and say, I'm sorry, this is not what Srila Prabhupada said. If the Brahmana is not chanting 16 rounds, the Shudra can come and say that this is not what Prabhupada said, and therefore something needs to be done. Everybody is accountable to everybody else within Devi Varnashram Dharma. And then this is where security comes from. This is where protection comes from. This is where shelter comes from. The fear that we have to manifest Devi Varnashram is because of this misunderstanding. We think we're not going to be secure, we're not going to be safe. So should I take a risk or should I not take a risk to manifest Prabhupada's vision? And our experience is in Asuri Varnashram, in the perverted Varnashram, that this accountability isn't there. When the Brahmanas begin to distort the truth, you'll see in this purport again, you see Satyam. This word means that one should not distort the truth for some personal interest. In the Vedic literature there are some difficult passages, but the meaning of the purpose should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. That is the process for understanding. What does it mean? We have Guru Parampara. We have Prabhupada's books, the law books for mankind. That is the meaning of learning from a bona fide spiritual master. So if in Devi Varnashram or in Prabhupada's Varnashram, if the Brahmana comes and begins to distort the truth, anybody else can come forward and say, my dear sir, hang on, this is wrong, we don't accept this, because we have a standard here. The standard is Srila Prabhupada's books. So even the Brahmana is accountable to Srila Prabhupada's books, which is accessible not just to the Brahmanas. This sadhana program is for all 4 Varnas and all 4 ashrams. You understand? And in the perverted Varnashram, what was the case? Only the Brahmanas would study. They won't even give access. So nobody else could even come and question whether the Brahmanas were actually, following the Shastra or not. But in Prabhupada's system, it's not like that. In Prabhupada's system, it's transparent. It's for everybody. So this is the missing link. If this misunderstanding is eradicated, we can actually go forward. You will see within the next few decades, Varnashram will become a reality. But this is probably the most crucial thing blocking. Devotees are sincere. They're actually willing. They have a vision. They want to do what Prabhupada wanted. But there is this fear, which is completely natural. It's completely natural. See, brahmacharis and sannyasis have nothing to lose. We have 3 sets of cloth. We'll sleep on the ground anywhere. We don't have to worry about maintaining others. All we need to do is keep ourselves in good health so we can do sadhana, and then that's it, But you can't do Varnashram just with brahmacharis and sannyasis. You need all 4 Varnas and all 4 ashrams. You need families. Garbhadhana Sanskar. And families means security. Means there needs to be a system in place, an independent, where everyone is accountable. A system, and then therefore people can feel safe. Devotees can feel safe. Yes, it's not just we're there and we're liable to be exploited and abused, like is the case in the perverted Varnashram that you see nowadays in India. So that's the work that's remaining. We're trying to get the cows and the lands, but we're missing the principles. There's a difference between the principle and the detail. See, the detail varies according to time, place and circumstance. In Dwapara Yuga, the Kshatriyas would fight with bows and arrows. In this Yuga, maybe bows and arrows are not going to work. If people are attacking with guns, your bows and arrows won't be much use. So this is a detail. This is a detail. The detail can be adjusted according to the time, the place and the circumstance. The principles always remain the same, regardless of time, place and circumstance. So we're actually missing the understanding of the principles of Varnashram Dharma. There are core principles that need to be understood very carefully. And it has to be understood how these principles exist across time, in all 4 yugas. And then the details will actually come of their own. If you get the principles right, the cows and the land will just come automatically. We're trying to get these details right, but we're actually missing the point. We're actually missing the principles. And the core principle of Prabhupada's Varnashram is that Krishna is the center. That's one. And there's many others, there's a few others. The second principle is that not only is Krishna is the center, we're all Vaishnavas and we're all accountable. We're all accountable, we're all following Prabhupada's standards. These are core principles that if we get those right, the land and the cows and everything that's needed for Varnashram will follow of their own accord. So simplicity, ahimsa, The quality of ahimsa is a Vaishnava quality. Not putting others in distress. And in fact, not preaching is ahimsa, is himsa. So ahimsa means preaching. So again, Vaishnava. And can you say that then preaching is only for the Brahmanas? The Kshatriyas will not preach, the Vaishyas? No. This is a preaching movement, and every single Varna and every single ashram has their contribution to this preaching movement. And that's how it's going to work efficiently. So therefore, all 4 Varnas and all 4 ashramas are practicing ahimsa within Devi Varnashram. Satyam, same thing. We already covered this point. It's not just for the mercantile, it's for everybody. But the emphasis is being given, why? Because they're more likely, by dint of their occupation, by the nature of the occupation, they're more likely to fall into the trap of not doing it. So therefore Prabhupada emphasizes that a little bit. The word tejas here is used for Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas should always be very strong to give protection to the weak. They should not pose themselves as non-violent. So, how many real Kshatriyas are to be found in the world today? In Vedic times, in the previous Yuga, the king would actually be on the battlefield. He'd be the first one, and he wouldn't be afraid to die. Nowadays it doesn't work like this. Now the Kshatriya sends soldiers out, and he's very comfortably sitting in an office. So Prabhupada is emphasizing like this, so that we don't fall into the trap of the negative, strengthening the negative instead of the positive quality of that particular varna or ashram. But factually it should be for everybody. There's a few qualities here that it's very, because we have a few minutes, we have 2 minutes. Akrodha means to check anger. That's very difficult. I was speaking with His Holiness Bhakti Tirthamdar Maharaj today, and I said, Maharaj, I'm going to have to give a class on Bhagavad Gita later on today, and in the purport it says, it's speaking about checking anger, otherwise the body will get polluted. And I said, Maharaj, 10 minutes ago I got angry, so I'm unfit to go and give this Bhagavad Gita class. These things can seem overwhelming for us. We're conditioned by the modes of material nature, and in Kali Yuga, speak for myself, my conditioning tends to lean towards passion and ignorance, not goodness. So sometimes it should be taken in context. When we look at all these qualities, it may seem overwhelming. I have to do all this. Yes, but utsaha nishchaya dhairyat, patience is required. As one is practicing sadhana bhakti and they're trying to cultivate these qualities, we're not going to attain success overnight. So we shouldn't fall into this trap of the temptation of, what is it, sour grapes? This is too tough, I'll ignore it completely. Actually, it's one of the things. It's a psychological thing with devotees sometimes, and even I've been through this, I've experienced this, is I look at the Shastra and I'll see this and I'll be like, and then I have a mental resistance to it, a psychological resistance to it, because it seems too difficult. The 26 qualities, I don't even have one of them. I won't even hear about it. There's a kind of psychological resistance. Even if you sit in the class and you're hearing about it, you don't really accept it within your own heart. You don't go home with having internalized these instructions. So why this is there is because we submit to our conditioning. We bow down to our conditioning. You are all powerful. It's not true. Krishna is all powerful. Krishna's words are all powerful. And if you attempt to follow Krishna's instructions, you will be successful in time. Utsaha, nishchaya, confidence. Right. So this psychological resistance needs to be overcome. We shouldn't, because maybe we think, I need to be this kind of person. No. Well, yes, but in your own time. You practice it bit by bit, And the very meaning of practice, as we say, is If practice didn't contain mistakes, it wouldn't be called practice, it would be called perfection. The meaning of the word practice by definition itself means that mistakes are to be expected. And then we learn from the mistakes, and then we try to avoid the mistakes again in the future. That's the meaning of practice. So we can be forgiving to ourselves and not develop a psychological resistance to hearing about these wonderful qualities, these divine qualities. Because after all, we have to cultivate them, otherwise the bad dog will win. We don't actually have a choice in the matter. It has to be done. So let's start somewhere. We start with whatever we can do. Let's look at something that we maybe already have some success with, and then that's a little encouraging. I have a little bit of success with this or that, and that's good. So that means I can also cultivate the others. We can encourage ourselves like that. So it's 6:30, 6:33. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I hope this wasn't too much, too overwhelming or too difficult to grasp. But thank you very much. And if you have any questions or comments, you're welcome to share with. There's a microphone there. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki. His Divine Grace Srila Bhai Chandra Vrinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I don't know if I am qualified to ask a question because I came very late. I don't even know what was the beginning of the class. But then a big fear or a big doubt is there in my mind. The topic that was being discussed about Varnashram and the Varnashram system. I'm just talking about the basic that Prabhupada did this when ISKCON was just a year-old child, and in 1965 or 60, just a year later I heard that the Vrindavan farm community was established. So it means that it's an integral part of the movement, and whatever is an integral part of the movement, that has to be placed very prominently in all our headquarters. Vrindavan Dham and Mayapur Dham, please. Vrindavan Dham is because the government's policies of developing concrete housing colonies, Chaitanya Vihar, whatever, probably it's not in our hands totally. But as far as Mayapur is concerned, there's a big land that is there in our jurisdiction. Now, the advanced stage will still probably take some time, but the basic stage, living with land and cows. So we need to preserve some land even in our headquarters, that when the advanced stage mentally will come, we'll at least have the infrastructure ready in our headquarters so that all our devotees and through our devotees the entire world can be, they can be displayed a role model. So but the trend unfortunately of cowless apartment in the land of cows. I mean, Braj, I don't know much of scriptures, but I've just heard one line from Srila Prabhupada, Gavo Charati Di Braj, where cows graze at his Braj. So then, in the register of Krishna, this is all registered in the name of cows. There's a need to stay, there's a need to make apartments to stay. But the nature of apartments that is there, these are cowless apartments. In a country like India where still there are apartments, if you want, we can have an arrangement for cows, at least in our residences. So this culture of cowless apartments both in Vrindavan and which are being promoted and these are being taken as investments. It's like a talk of the day, how much do you own and all these things. I'm sorry, but these details have to be discussed unfortunately. And the same trend is coming up in Mayapur Dham, and even in the compound of Mayapur Dham, where there is one advertisement, one slogan which says